She was hired to serve dinner to Manhattan's most feared billionaire. She signed an NDA. She promised to forget everything. But 3 weeks later, she's staring at a pregnancy test, and forgetting him is no longer an option. Before we begin, if you love stories like this, hit like and subscribe. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Victoria Bello pressed her palm against the small of her back, trying to ease the ache that had become her constant companion. The lunch rush at Le Jardin restaurant had finally died down, leaving behind a battlefield of dirty plates and crumpled dollar bills that wouldn't even cover her rent. Table 7 left you $3 on a $100 bill, Danielle muttered, sliding past with a tray balanced on her hip. $3, Vicky. I watched that woman pull out a Hermes bag to find her credit card. Victoria managed a tired smile. At least it's something. Something? Girl, you're killing yourself for scraps. Danielle's voice dropped lower. When are you going to tell me what's really going on? You've picked up every extra shift for 3 months. You barely sleep. And don't think I haven't noticed you've stopped eating lunch. Victoria turned away, busying herself with wiping down the counter. The truth sat heavy in her chest. Her mother's medication had doubled in price after they'd moved to New York 3 years ago. Her younger brother Chitty needed tuition for his final year at City College, and their landlord in the Bronx had already extended the rent deadline twice out of pure charity. She was the eldest daughter, the one who'd sacrificed her own education dreams to keep the family afloat after her father died back in Nigeria. They'd come to America for better opportunities, but the cost of living had crushed those dreams faster than she could have imagined. Asking for help felt like admitting that leaving Lagos had been a mistake. I'm fine, Danny. Just saving up. Saving up for what? You won't even tell me. Victoria. Mr. Chun, the restaurant manager, appeared in the kitchen doorway. His expression was unreadable. My office. Now, Danielle shot her a worried look as Victoria followed Mr. Chun down the narrow hallway. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she made a mistake with an order? Had someone complained? Mr. Chun closed the door and sat behind his cluttered desk. I'll be direct. A client has made an unusual request, and I thought of you. Victoria's stomach tightened. What kind of request? Lucas Westbrook. Perhaps you've heard of him? Westbrook Industries. Everyone in New York knew that name. The billionaire who'd built a tech empire before 30, known for his ruthless business tactics and complete absence from social events. Forbes called him a genius. The tabloids called him a ghost who haunted the top floors of Manhattan. He's hosting a private dinner tomorrow night, Mr. Chun continued. Very exclusive. He needs someone to serve, just him and one guest. For hours of work. The pay is $30,000. Victoria's breath caught. $30,000. That was more than she made in a year. It could cover her mother's medication for 18 months, Chitty's entire tuition, and 6 months of rent with money left over. Why so much? She asked carefully. What's the catch? Mr. Chun shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Westbrook is particular. He wants absolute discretion, perfect service, and someone who won't gossip about what they see or hear. You're my best waitress, Victoria. Professional, quiet, reliable. I told him you were perfect for the job. Something in his tone made her uneasy. What aren't you telling me? The dinner is at his private penthouse, not a restaurant, and he paused. There's a non-disclosure agreement you'll have to sign. Very strict terms about privacy. Red flags waved in Victoria's mind, but $30,000 could change everything. She thought of her mother's tired face, the worry lines deepening every time Victoria handed over money that was never quite enough. She thought of Chitty, brilliant and ambitious, who might have to drop out of college 1 semester before graduation. She thought of the notices from the landlord, the past due medical bills, the weight of being responsible for everyone. Just serving dinner, she asked firmly. Nothing else. That's what he specified. For hours, complete discretion, professional service only. Mr. Chen slid a business card across the desk. Think about it tonight. Call this number by morning if you're interested. Victoria picked up the card, the expensive paper stock smooth between her fingers. Lucas Westbrook's name was embossed in gold lettering with a Manhattan address that made her pulse quicken. 5th Avenue, overlooking Central Park. I'll do it, she said before she could talk herself out of it. The Westbrook Tower penthouse occupied the entire 60th floor, accessible only by a private elevator that required both a key card and fingerprint scan. Victoria stood in the mirrored elevator, watching her reflection rise toward an encounter that felt increasingly surreal. She dressed in her most professional black dress and pulled her natural hair into a neat bun. The non-disclosure agreement she'd signed that morning had been 15 pages long, filled with legal language about confidentiality, penalties for breach of up to $5 million, and clauses that made it clear Lucas Westbrook's privacy was worth more than her entire life. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Victoria stepped into a space that looked like it had been designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's glittering skyline, modern art that probably cost more than most people's houses, and furniture that seemed chosen more for aesthetic than comfort. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces, all steel and glass, and absolute control. Not a single personal photograph, no warmth, no evidence that anyone actually lived here. It looked like a museum or a mausoleum. You're early. The voice came from her left, deep and commanding. Victoria turned and felt her breath catch. Lucas Westbrook stood backlit by the windows, his silhouette imposing before she could even see his face clearly. When he moved forward, she understood why people called him formidable. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked perpetually tousled as if he'd been running his hands through it. He wore an expensive suit with the casual ease of someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to worry about money. But it was his eyes that struck her, dark, intense, and completely unreadable, like windows that had been painted black from the inside. This was a man who'd learned to keep the world at a distance, and had built walls so high that even he might have forgotten what existed on the other side. Traffic was lighter than expected, sir, Victoria said, keeping her voice steady and professional despite the way her heart hammered against her ribs. Where would you like me to set up? He studied her for a long moment, and Victoria had the unsettling feeling he was cataloging every detail about her, reading her the way other people read contracts, looking for weaknesses or angles or something she couldn't name. It made her want to fidget, but she held perfectly still. The dining room is through there. He gestured to the right with an elegant, controlled movement. Everything you need is already prepared by my chef. My guest arrives in 2 hours. I expect invisible service, present when needed, absent otherwise. Can you manage that? Yes, sir. And you signed the NDA? This morning. Good. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been satisfaction or might have been something darker. Because what happens tonight stays within these walls. I don't care what you see, what you hear, or what you think you understand. You forget all of it the moment you leave. Are we clear? Victoria met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated despite the ice in her veins. Crystal clear, sir. He held her stare for another beat, then nodded once, sharp and final. The kitchen is fully stocked. Wine is in the cellar. I'll show you. My guest has specific preferences. He turned and walked toward a hallway, clearly expecting her to follow. Victoria trailed behind him, trying not to gawk at the penthouse. Every detail screamed wealth. The marble floors that looked like liquid, the chandelier that probably cost more than her family would make in 10 lifetimes, the view of Central Park spread out below like a kingdom Lucas Westbrook owned. He led her down a curved staircase to a temperature-controlled wine cellar that belonged in a castle. Bottles lined the walls, labels in French and Italian, vintages that meant nothing to Victoria but everything to people who had money to burn. "My guest prefers the 2015 Chateau Margaux," Lucas said, pointing to a specific section. "Decant it at 7:45. Exactly. Not before, not after. She's particular about timing." Victoria asked, then immediately regretted the question. None of her business. Lucas's jaw tightened. "My business associate, Isabella Ashford. You may have heard of the Ashford family, old money political connections, the kind of people who believe the world exists to serve them." His tone was acid, but something else lurked beneath it. Obligation, maybe, or resentment. "I'll have everything ready, sir." He studied her again, with that unsettling intensity. "You're Nigerian?" The question surprised her. "Yes, sir. My family moved here 3 years ago." "From Lagos?" "Yes." Something shifted in his expression, so subtle she almost missed it. "I have business interests there. Built a tech hub in Yaba 2 years ago." He paused. "Why did you leave?" Victoria hesitated. This felt personal, too personal for a man paying her $30,000 to be invisible. But something in his face made her answer honestly. "My father died. My mother thought America would give us better opportunities. Better health care, better education for my brother." She smiled sadly. "Turns out opportunity costs more than we expected." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost some of its sharp edge. "Your mother was wrong. Opportunity isn't about geography, it's about leverage. And leverage requires sacrifice most people aren't willing to make." "What kind of sacrifice?" Victoria asked before she could stop herself. His eyes went dark, distant. "Everything that makes you weak. Every attachment, every emotion, every person who could be used against you." He turned abruptly and headed back up the stairs. "Get to work, Miss Bello. Isabella arrives at 8 sharp, and she notices everything." Victoria stood alone in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles worth more than her life, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Lucas Westbrook wasn't just rich and powerful, he was haunted. By what? She didn't know. But she recognized the look in his eyes because she'd seen it in the mirror during her darkest moments after her father died, the look of someone who'd lost something precious and decided never to be vulnerable again. She went upstairs and got to work. Isabella Ashford arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, dressed in a crimson dress that probably cost more than Victoria's family's annual rent. She was beautiful in that polished, untouchable way of women who'd been groomed for high society since birth, perfect blonde hair, perfect makeup, perfect posture. She looked at Victoria the way someone might glance at furniture, present, functional, irrelevant. "Lucas, darling," Isabella purred, kissing the air near his cheeks. "Your apartment is as charmingly sterile as ever. When are you going to let me introduce you to my interior designer? This place needs warmth. I prefer function over aesthetics," Lucas said coolly, guiding her toward the dining room. His hand hovered near the small of her back, without quite touching. "Shall we?" Victoria served the first course. Seared scallops with butternut squash puree, with practiced efficiency. She poured the wine Lucas had specified, noted that Isabella immediately checked the label and year, and melted into the background. "So," Isabella began, swirling her wine with theatrical precision, "have you reconsidered my father's proposal?" Lucas's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "We're not discussing business tonight, Isabella." "Everything with you is business, Lucas." Her smile was sharp. "That's what I love about you, no pretense. But Daddy's offer is generous. Merge Westbrook Industries with Ashford International, and you'd have access to political connections that would make you untouchable." We're talking contracts worth billions, protection from regulatory scrutiny, a seat at tables most people don't even know exist. At what cost? Lucas asked quietly. Isabella leaned forward, and Victoria, clearing plates as silently as possible, caught the predatory gleam in her eyes. The usual cost of power, darling. Strategic partnerships, public appearances, a wedding that would make headlines and secure both our families' legacies. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. We've known each other since prep school, Lucas. Our families have been intertwined for generations. This makes sense. Victoria's stomach twisted. This wasn't a date. It was a negotiation. Isabella wasn't here because she loved Lucas. She was here because marrying him meant consolidating power, merging empires, creating a dynasty. Lucas pulled his hand away slowly, deliberately. And what happens when the strategic partnership becomes inconvenient? When emotions get involved? When one person wants more than the other can give? Emotions? Isabella laughed, but it sounded hollow. Lucas, please. We're adults. We understand that marriage at our level isn't about feelings. It's about legacy. My parents barely tolerate each other, and they've been married for 35 years. That's how this works. You provide stability and brilliance. I provide connections and heirs. Everyone wins. Except the people involved, Lucas said quietly. Isabella's perfect facade cracked slightly. Is this about her? That woman who… Don't. Lucas's voice could have frozen fire. We're not discussing her. Victoria served the main course, herb-crusted lamb with roasted vegetables, and noticed Lucas's knuckles had gone white around his fork. Whatever her, Isabella had referenced, it was the wound that had created the fortress Lucas lived in. Fine, Isabella said, recovering her composure. But Lucas, you're 32 years old. You can't hide in this tower forever, making money and refusing to actually live. What are you so afraid of? I'm not afraid, Lucas said, and Victoria heard the lie in his voice. I'm cautious. There's a difference. No, you're terrified. Isabella's voice softened, and for the first time, Victoria glimpsed something genuine beneath the polished exterior, maybe even concern. She hurt you badly, I know, but Rachel was years ago. You've built an empire. Since then, you've proven yourself 1,000 times over. When are you going to stop punishing yourself? Rachel. The name hung in the air like smoke. Lucas stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This dinner is over. Lucas. Thank you for coming, Isabella. I'll consider your father's proposal, but I won't be manipulated, and I won't have my past dissected over lamb and wine. His voice was ice. Good night. Isabella stood slowly, gathering her purse with practiced dignity. You can't control everything, Lucas. Eventually, something will get through those walls. And when it does, I hope you're ready. She turned to Victoria on her way out. The food was excellent. You're wasted in this mausoleum. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like thunder. Victoria began clearing the table in silence. Lucas stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at Manhattan like he was searching for something in the lights. She should leave him alone, finish quickly, and get out. That was the professional thing to do. Instead, she heard herself say, "The lamb is still warm if you'd like to actually eat some." Lucas turned, surprise flickering across his face. "You're still here. You paid me for 4 hours. It's only been 2. Victoria carried the plates to the kitchen. And you barely touched your food. I'm not hungry. When's the last time you ate? She busied herself with rinsing dishes, giving him space to answer or ignore her. Silence stretched between them. Then, this morning, coffee. That's not eating, Mr. Westbrook. That's surviving. She plated fresh lamb and vegetables, carrying it back to where he stood. Sit. Eat. I'll finish cleaning." He stared at the plate like it was a foreign object. "Why do you care?" "Because I know what it's like to forget you're human." Victoria met his eyes steadily. "When you're so busy taking care of everything else, business, money, obligations, you forget that you need taking care of too." Something cracked in Lucas's expression. He took the plate, sat at the dining table, and ate in silence while Victoria finished clearing. She could feel his eyes on her occasionally, questioning, curious. "The NDA?" he said suddenly. "What you heard tonight." "I heard two people having dinner," Victoria interrupted gently. "Nothing else." Isabella mentioned. She mentioned lamb, wine, and interior design. Victoria held his gaze. "That's all I remember, Mr. Westbrook." He studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "You're different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone intimidated. Someone eager to please. Someone who'd look at me and see dollar signs." He set down his fork. "Instead, you look at me like I'm human." "That's because you are," Victoria said simply. "No matter how much money you have, or how high this tower is, you're still just a person. And people need more than walls and wine cellars." "Do they?" His voice was bitter. "In my experience, people need exactly two things: power and the illusion of control. Everything else is weakness waiting to be exploited." "Who taught you that?" "Rachel?" Lucas's expression shuddered immediately. "You don't know anything about Rachel." "You're right, I don't. But I know what betrayal looks like, Mr. Westbrook." Victoria's voice softened. "My father died of a stroke. But what really killed him was finding out his business partner, his best friend since childhood, had been embezzling from their company for years. Daddy had trusted him completely, loved him like a brother, and that man destroyed everything." Lucas was silent, listening. "After Daddy died, I wanted to never trust anyone again," Victoria continued. "I wanted to build walls so high that nobody could hurt me or my family. But you know what I learned? Those walls don't just keep pain out, they keep life out too. And eventually, you're not protected. You're just alone." "Alone is safe," Lucas said quietly. "Alone is empty." Victoria gathered the last of the dishes. "There's a difference." She headed to the kitchen, giving him space to absorb or reject what she'd said. It wasn't her place to lecture a billionaire about his life choices. She was here to serve dinner, collect her $30,000, and disappear. But when she came back out, Lucas was standing by the windows again. And this time his shoulders looked less like armor and more like burden. "Rachel was my fiancée," he said without turning around. "We met at Harvard. She was brilliant, beautiful, ambitious. Everything I thought I wanted. I gave her everything: my time, my trust, my heart. I even gave her access to company accounts because I trusted her completely." Victoria's chest tightened. She knew where this was going. "The week before our wedding, I discovered she'd been funneling money to offshore accounts. Millions of dollars. And she'd been sleeping with my business rival, feeding him proprietary information about Westbrook Industries deals." Lucas's voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reciting facts about the weather. "She'd never loved me. It was always about the money, the connections, the access. I was just a means to an end." "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. "Don't be." She taught me the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. Emotions are liabilities. Trust is a luxury only fools can afford. And love. He laughed bitterly. Love is just a pretty word people use while they're taking what they want. Victoria walked over to stand beside him at the window. "Not everyone is Rachel, Mr. Westbrook." "No, but everyone wants something. Isabella wants a merger and political power. My board members want profits and control. Even you're here for $30,000, not because you care about me." He finally looked at her. At least with transactions, the terms are clear. Nobody gets hurt because nobody expects more than what was agreed upon. Is that why you paid so much for tonight? Victoria asked quietly. To make sure it stayed transactional, to prove you're right about people. Lucas's jaw tightened. Maybe. They stood in silence, two people from completely different worlds, united by the understanding that life could break you in ways that never fully healed. I should go, Victoria said finally. It's been 4 hours. Wait. Lucas turned to face her fully. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you think it's possible for someone like me, someone whose decided emotions are weaknesses, to change? Or am I too far gone? Victoria considered the question carefully. This moment felt important, like her answer mattered more than either of them wanted to admit. I think, she said slowly, that deciding emotions are weaknesses is just another way of staying safe. But I also think you asked me that question because part of you still wants to believe you're wrong. And that's the part worth fighting for, Mr. Westbrook. Lucas stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Your payment, plus extra for. He hesitated. For reminding me I'm human. Victoria took the envelope, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact felt electric, dangerous, like touching a live wire. Thank you, Mr. Westbrook. Lucas, he said quietly. Call me Lucas. Thank you, Lucas. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the elevator. Victoria, she looked back. If I wanted to see you again, not for work, just to talk, would you consider it? Every rational thought in Victoria's head screamed that this was a terrible idea. Lucas Westbrook was broken, emotionally unavailable, and lived in a world so far removed from hers that they might as well be different species. Getting involved with him would be complicated, messy, and potentially devastating. But she looked at him standing in his fortress of glass and steel, surrounded by wealth that couldn't fill the emptiness, and saw something that called to her, a man who'd forgotten how to hope and was asking her to help him remember. I'd consider it, she said softly. Something flickered in Lucas's eyes, surprise, maybe, or the first spark of something that might eventually become warmth. I'll call you, he said. Victoria stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed, she saw Lucas watching her with an expression that looked almost like longing. Victoria lay in her narrow bed in the Bronx apartment, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what had happened. It was 3 a.m, and sleep remained elusive. The envelope Lucas had given her sat on her nightstand. She'd opened it when she got home and found not $30,000, but $50,000, along with a business card with his private cell phone number written on the back in precise handwriting. $50,000. More money than she'd ever held. Enough to solve every immediate problem her family faced, with room to breathe for the first time in 3 years. But it was the phone number that kept her awake. You're still up? Danielle's voice came from the doorway. Her roommate padded into the room and sat on the edge of the bed. How did it go? You've been weird since you got back. Victoria sat up, hugging her knees. It was complicated. Complicated how? Did something bad happen? Because, girl, I will call the police. No, nothing like that. Victoria tried to find words for what she couldn't fully explain to herself. He was just not what I expected. Lonely, I think. Really, really lonely. Danielle raised an eyebrow. We're talking about Lucas Westbrook, right? Billionaire, Forbes list could buy and sell entire countries. Yeah. And you think he's lonely? I know he is. Victoria pulled her knees tighter. He's built this perfect prison for himself, Danny. All that money, all that power, and he's terrified to let anyone close. It's sad. Vicky. Danielle's voice turned serious. Please tell me you're not getting emotionally involved with a billionaire who hired you to serve dinner. I'm not, Victoria started, then stopped. Was she? He asked if he could see me again. Just to talk. Oh, honey, no. No, no, no. Danielle shook her head. Men like that don't just talk to women like us. I don't care how lonely he seemed. You live in completely different worlds. This will not end well. I know, Victoria whispered. I know it won't. But you're going to see him anyway, aren't you? Victoria looked at the business card on her nightstand. Logic said Danielle was right. This was dangerous territory. Emotional quicksand disguised as opportunity. But something in Lucas's eyes had called to something in her, a recognition that they were both survivors who'd learned to armor themselves against the world. I don't know yet, she said, but she was lying, and both of them knew it. 3 days passed before Lucas called. Victoria had almost convinced herself he wouldn't, that the moment in his penthouse had been an aberration he'd since rationalized away. She was walking home from an evening shift when her phone rang with an unknown number. Hello, Victoria. It's Lucas Westbrook. A pause. Is this a good time? Victoria's heart hammered. She ducked into a coffee shop doorway, away from street noise. It's fine. How are you? Honestly, I'm not sure. He sounded uncertain, vulnerable in a way that didn't match the controlled man she'd met. I've been thinking about what you said, about walls keeping out life, not just pain. And He trailed off. You what? I'd like to see you again. Have coffee, maybe. Talk. No NDAs. No $30,000 transactions. Just coffee. Victoria closed her eyes. This was the moment to be smart, to politely decline, to keep her life simple and separate from the complications Lucas represented. When she heard herself ask, "Tomorrow? There's a place in Brooklyn. Small, quiet. I'll text you the address." Okay. Victoria. His voice softened. Thank you for considering this. I know it's unusual. Unusual is one word for it, Victoria said, but she was smiling despite herself. They said goodbye, and Victoria stared at her phone for a long moment before texting Danielle, "I'm going to see him for coffee." I know it's stupid. Please don't lecture me. Danielle's response came immediately. Already planning your funeral outfit. Wear something that photographs, well, for when you're on the cover of tabloids, as Billionaire's secret affair. Victoria laughed despite the anxiety coiling in her stomach. This was crazy. She knew it was crazy. But maybe crazy was exactly what they both needed. The coffee shop Lucas chose was in Park Slope, small, independently owned, the kind of place where nobody would expect to find a billionaire. Victoria arrived first, ordered a simple coffee she couldn't quite afford, and found a corner table away from windows. Lucas walked in 15 minutes later, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no suit, no armor of wealth. He looked younger, more approachable, but his eyes still carried that wariness of someone who'd learned to expect betrayal. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi." They stared at each other for a moment, neither sure how to begin this strange dance they'd entered. "I haven't done this in a long time," Lucas admitted. "Just met someone for coffee without an agenda or business objective." "What's your agenda today?" Victoria asked. "To figure out why I can't stop thinking about you." He said it simply, honestly. "After you left, I tried to rationalize it. You're beautiful. That's true but insufficient. You're interesting, also true but incomplete. And then I realized you looked at me like I was human. Not rich, not powerful, not a prize to be won or a tool to be used. Just human. And I haven't felt that in years." Victoria's chest tightened. "Lucas, I need to be honest with you about something." His expression shuddered slightly. "Go ahead." "I needed that money desperately. My mother is sick. My brother needs tuition. We're barely keeping our heads above water. When you paid me $50,000 instead of 30, you changed my family's life. She held his gaze. So, yes, part of why I was kind to you was because you were paying me, and I need you to know that because I won't let you think that you're different from everyone else. Lucas interrupted gently. Victoria, you told me exactly what you needed and why. That's not manipulation. That's honesty. The people who've hurt me lied about their motives. You've been transparent from the beginning. But what if you're seeing something in me that isn't there? Victoria pressed. What if you're so lonely that you're projecting onto the first person who showed you basic human decency? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Maybe I am, he admitted. Or maybe you're underestimating the power of being seen. Do you know what my typical day looks like? Meetings with people who want something. Negotiations where everyone is performing. Social obligations with people like Isabella, who see me as a chess piece in some larger game. By the end of the day, I can't remember the last time someone asked how I was feeling and actually wanted to know the answer. How are you feeling? Victoria asked softly. Terrified, Lucas said, because I want to trust you, and trust is the thing that destroyed me before. But I'm also... He paused, searching for words. I'm tired of being alone, Victoria. I'm tired of living in that fortress. And when I'm with you, I feel like maybe I don't have to be. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. The gesture was bold, intimate, dangerous. I'm scared too, she admitted. You're offering me something I don't understand, attention from someone who could buy and sell my entire world. What happens when you get bored? When the novelty wears off? When you remember that I'm just a waitress from the Bronx who can't even afford decent health insurance? What if I don't? Lucas's thumb brushed across her knuckles. What if this isn't about novelty or boredom? What if I'm just a man who met someone who makes him want to be better? They sat in silence, hands clasped across the coffee shop table, both aware they were stepping off a cliff without knowing what waited below. Tell me about your family, Lucas said finally. Your mother, your brother. I want to know. So Victoria told him about her father's death, about moving to America with nothing but hope, about working 3 jobs to keep everyone afloat, about Chitty's dreams of becoming an engineer, about her mother's quiet strength that was being eroded by illness they couldn't afford to treat properly, about feeling like she was drowning and swimming at the same time, determined to survive but exhausted by the effort. Lucas listened with an intensity that felt like being truly heard for the first time. And what are your dreams? He asked when she finished. Not for your family, for you. What did you want before you became responsible for everyone? Victoria smiled sadly. I wanted to be a fashion designer. I used to sketch dresses constantly when I was young. My father said I had an eye for beauty, that I could create magic with fabric. She shrugged. But that requires school, money, time I don't have. So I serve other people's dreams instead of living my own. What if you could have both? Lucas asked. What if there was a way to take care of your family and pursue your dreams? There isn't. Not in my reality. What if you're wrong about what's possible? Victoria pulled her hand back gently. Lucas, if this is leading to some offer where you solve all my problems with money, please don't. I'm not a charity case, and I won't be someone's project. That's not what I'm suggesting. Lucas said quickly. I'm suggesting that maybe we could help each other. You remind me what it means to be human, and maybe I could help create space for you to be more than just a survivor. How? I don't know yet, but I want to try to figure it out. Together. Victoria wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. This is crazy, she whispered. Probably, Lucas agreed. But I've spent 5 years being careful, being controlled, being smart. And I'm miserable. Maybe crazy is exactly what I need. They talked for 3 hours, until the coffee shop staff started cleaning around them. They talked about everything and nothing. His childhood as the only child of workaholic parents who'd loved him but never understood him, her memories of Legos, and the family they'd left behind, his complicated relationship with success, her guilt about not being able to save everyone she loved. When they finally left, Lucas walked her to the subway station. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Yes," Victoria said, no longer fighting the inevitable. "Tomorrow. I work tomorrow. Then the day after. And the day after that. And every day you'll let me." Victoria looked up at him, at this brilliant, broken man who'd somehow decided she was worth the risk, and felt something shift in her chest, something dangerous, something hopeful. "Okay," she whispered. Lucas smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face, and Victoria realized with equal parts wonder and terror that she was falling for him. This was going to get complicated. 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments. Lucas and Victoria met whenever she wasn't working: coffee shops, walks through Central Park, late-night conversations on her tiny fire escape where he looked comically out of place but refused to complain. They were careful, discreet, existing in a bubble that felt both magical and fragile. Victoria hadn't told anyone except Danielle, who oscillated between concern and cautious optimism. Lucas hadn't told anyone at all, which should have been a red flag but felt more like protection, keeping something precious safe from the world that would judge and dissect it. On a Thursday evening, Lucas picked Victoria up after her shift at Le Jardin. He'd been waiting outside in jeans and a leather jacket, looking nothing like the Forbes billionaire and everything like a man who just wanted to be normal. "I have something to show you," he said, taking her hand. "What kind of something?" "The kind that requires trust." His eyes sparkled with something she'd never seen before: playfulness, maybe even joy. "Do you trust me, Victoria?" She should have been more careful with that word, should have remembered that trust was the thing that had destroyed him once and could destroy her now. But looking at his face, open and hopeful in a way that felt like a gift, she couldn't help herself. "Yes," she said, "I trust you." They took a car to Chelsea, stopping in front of an old industrial building that had been converted into artist lofts. Lucas led her up 3 flights of stairs to a door marked 3C, produced a key, and pushed it open. Victoria stepped inside and gasped. The space was massive: exposed brick walls, high ceilings with skylights letting in the last of the evening sun, hardwood floors that gleamed. But it was what filled the space that made her heart stop. Dress forms, industrial sewing machines, rolls of fabric in every color imaginable, design tables, pattern-making equipment, everything a fashion designer could possibly need. "What is this?" Victoria whispered, afraid to touch anything. "It's yours, if you want it." Lucas stood behind her, his voice gentle. "I know you said you weren't a charity case, and this isn't charity. This is an investment. I've seen your sketches, the ones you draw on napkins during slow shifts. You have real talent, Victoria, and talent deserves opportunity." Victoria turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "Lucas, I can't accept this. It's too much. The rent alone for a space like this in Chelsea is already paid for 2 years. He cupped her face gently. "Before you argue, listen. I'm not trying to solve your problems or make you dependent on me. I'm trying to give you what Rachel took from me: the ability to trust someone enough to accept help. Let me do this, please." "Why?" Victoria asked through tears. "Why would you do this for me?" Lucas's expression softened with something that looked dangerously close to love. "Because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before the world taught me to be afraid. Because you've given me something infinitely more valuable than any amount of money. And because—" He paused, vulnerability written across his face. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Victoria. And I don't know how to do that without giving you everything I have. Victoria's breath caught. Those words, falling in love, hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying. Say something, Lucas whispered. Instead of speaking, Victoria kissed him. It was their first kiss, tender and desperate, full of everything they'd been dancing around for weeks. Lucas pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from every hard thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, Victoria pressed her forehead to his. I'm falling in love with you too, and it scares me more than anything ever has. Me too, Lucas admitted, but maybe that means it's real. They spent the evening in the studio, Victoria touching everything with reverent fingers while Lucas watched with satisfaction. She showed him sketches from the notebook she carried everywhere, designs influenced by her Nigerian heritage, mixed with contemporary American fashion. Lucas listened as she explained her vision, clothing that celebrated African prints and patterns, but with modern silhouettes, fashion that bridged her two worlds. You could really do this, Lucas said. Not as a hobby, as a business. I could connect you with manufacturers, help you navigate the industry. One step at a time, Victoria interrupted gently. Right now, I just want to enjoy this moment. This gift you've given me. They sat on the floor surrounded by fabric and dreams, and Victoria felt something shift inside her. For 3 years, she'd been so focused on survival that she'd forgotten how to hope. Lucas was teaching her to hope again, and it was both beautiful and dangerous. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Vicky, call when you can. Need to talk about Chitty's tuition. Reality crashed back in. The studio was amazing, but it didn't solve the immediate crisis of her brother's education, her mother's medication, the rent due in a week. What's wrong? Lucas noticed her expression change. Nothing. Just family stuff. Victoria, don't do that. Don't shut me out. She sighed. Chitty's tuition is due. We're short about $3,000. I've been picking up extra shifts, but I'll take care of it, Lucas said immediately. No. Victoria. Lucas, no. She stood, creating distance. The studio is already too much. I can't let you start paying my family's bills. That's not a relationship. That's dependency. And I won't do that to either of us. Lucas stood too, frustration flickering across his face. Why is it so hard for you to accept help? Because I've watched what happens when people become financially dependent on someone else. My father's business partner controlled everything. And when he betrayed us, we had nothing. I won't let my family's survival depend on anyone but me. I'm not him, Victoria. I would never betray you like that. Rachel probably said the same thing. Victoria shot back, then immediately regretted it when Lucas's face shuddered. That's not fair, he said quietly. You're right. I'm sorry. Victoria rubbed her face tiredly. I'm scared, Lucas. This is all happening so fast. The studio, us, these feelings. And I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize I'm not worth all this trouble. Lucas crossed the space between them and took her hands. Listen to me. You are worth everything. Every risk, every fear, every complication. And I know you're scared. I'm terrified too. But we can't let fear stop us from building something real. What if real isn't enough? Victoria whispered. What if your world and my world are too different to bridge? Then we build a new world. Together. Victoria wanted to believe him, but a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that fairy tales didn't exist for girls from the Bronx who fell for billionaires. Those stories always ended in heartbreak. Take me home, she said softly. I need to think. Lucas looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. Okay. They rode back to the Bronx in silence. And when they reached her building, Victoria kissed him goodbye, but didn't invite him up. I love you, Lucas said before she could leave the car. I love you too, Victoria replied. That's what makes this so complicated. She watched his car disappear into traffic and climbed the stairs to her apartment with a heart full of hope and dread in equal measure. Victoria threw herself into work over the next week, picking up double shifts to avoid thinking about Lucas, the studio, and the impossible choice between pride and practicality. They texted, but she kept finding excuses not to meet. She needed space to think, to figure out if loving him was brave or foolish. Danielle noticed, of course. You're sabotaging, she said bluntly over breakfast. The man gave you a fully equipped design studio and told you he loves you, and you're running away. I'm being realistic, Victoria countered. We're from different worlds. Danny, eventually that will matter. Or you're terrified of being happy because you've spent so long being responsible that you don't know how to let someone take care of you. Danielle stirred her coffee aggressively. Not everything is a trap, Vicky. Sometimes good things happen to good people. Before Victoria could respond, her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, Victoria Bello. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes, this is Madeline Chen from the New York Fashion Institute. We received your portfolio and we're very impressed. We'd like to offer you a full scholarship to our advanced design program, starting next semester. Victoria's mind went blank. I'm sorry, what? Your portfolio, the one submitted 3 weeks ago, it's exceptional. We rarely offer full scholarships, but your work shows tremendous promise. I didn't submit a portfolio, Victoria said slowly. There was a pause. I have documentation here showing submission on November 3rd, along with a recommendation letter from Lucas Westbrook of Westbrook Industries. He's one of our major benefactors. Ice flooded Victoria's veins. I see. Thank you for calling. Can I have some time to consider the offer? Of course. We'll need an answer by the end of the month. Victoria hung up and stared at her phone. What's wrong? Danielle asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. Lucas submitted a portfolio on my behalf. To a fashion school. They're offering me a full scholarship. Victoria's voice was flat. That's amazing. Why do you look like someone died? Because he did it without asking me, Danny. He went behind my back, made decisions about my life, my career. Victoria's hands shook. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Him trying to control everything with money and connections. Or, Danielle said carefully, he saw an opportunity and wanted to help you. Maybe he just didn't think it through. He should have asked me first. This is my life, my choices. He doesn't get to make them for me, no matter how good his intentions are. Victoria grabbed her coat. Where are you going? Danielle called after her. To have a conversation I should have had a week ago. Victoria didn't call ahead. She went straight to Westbrook Tower, rode the private elevator up to the penthouse, and pounded on the door until Lucas opened it, surprise and relief warring on his face. Victoria, thank God. I've been trying to reach. You submitted my portfolio to a fashion school without telling me. Her voice was ice. Lucas's expression shifted from relief to confusion to defensive. They called you. Yes, they called to tell me about the full scholarship you arranged. The one you set up without my permission. Victoria stepped inside, anger making her voice shake. What gave you the right, Lucas? I thought you'd be happy. Happy? You went through my sketches, submitted my work, called in favors with people I don't even know, all without asking me if that's what I wanted. Victoria's voice rose. This is my life, my career, my choice. You don't get to make those decisions for me. I was trying to help, Lucas said, his own frustration building. You have talent that's being wasted serving food. I saw an opportunity you should have discussed with me. Victoria cut him off. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You have so much money and power that you think you can just fix everything, control everything, decide what's best for everyone. That's not what this is, Lucas said sharply. I love you. I want to give you opportunities you deserve. But I didn't ask for them. Don't you understand? Every time you swoop in and solve my problems with money, you take away my agency. You make me smaller, more dependent, and eventually I become just another thing you control. Lucas's face went pale. I would never control you. You already are. Victoria's voice cracked. The studio, the scholarship, paying for things without asking. Every gift comes with invisible strings, Lucas. And one day, you'll pull those strings and I'll have no choice but to dance. That's not fair. I'm not Rachel, and you're not my business to manage. Lucas's voice turned cold, defensive. I've been trying to show you that I can be different, that I can trust someone. And you're throwing it back in my face. Because trust goes both ways. Victoria shouted. You want me to trust you, but you don't trust me enough to make my own choices. You see a problem, and you fix it without thinking about how that makes me feel powerless. So, what? I should just watch you struggle? Watch you work yourself to death when I have the means to help? Lucas's walls were going back up, stone by stone. That's not love, Victoria. That's negligence. No, love is respecting my boundaries. Love is asking before you make life-changing decisions on my behalf. Love is, Victoria stopped, tears streaming down her face. Love is seeing me as an equal partner, not a project to fix. Silence fell between them, heavy and painful. I thought I was doing the right thing, Lucas said finally, his voice hollow. I know you did, but that's the problem. You thought. You decided. You acted. All without me. Victoria wiped her tears. I need a partner, Lucas, not a savior. And I don't think you know how to be that. So what are you saying? Lucas's voice was carefully controlled, emotionless, the same voice he'd used the first night they met. His armor was back in place. I'm saying I need space. Time to figure out if this can work, or if we're too broken in different ways to fix each other. Space, Lucas repeated flatly. That's just a kind way of saying goodbye. No, it's a way of saying I need to think about us, about what I want, about whether love is enough when everything else is complicated. Lucas turned away, facing the windows, and the city spread below. Rachel asked for space too, right before she disappeared with $3 million and my company's trade secrets. So forgive me if space sounds like I'm leaving and not coming back. Victoria's anger dissolved into sadness. I'm not Rachel. Because you deserve to know. Victoria shouted, because despite everything that went wrong between us, I loved you. I still love you. And our child deserves a father who knows they exist, even if that father is too scared to let himself care. Silence crashed between them. You love me, Lucas said finally, his voice strange. Yes, you idiot. I love you. Victoria wiped angry tears. I love you even though you're controlling and broken and terrified of being hurt again. I love you even though you don't trust me, even though you think the worst of people, even though you just accused me of lying about being pregnant. Because underneath all those walls and defenses, I've seen who you really are. And that person is worth loving. Lucas's carefully maintained control shattered. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. God, Victoria, I'm so sorry. You're right, I'm broken and scared, and I don't know how to trust. But I love you. I've been miserable without you, and the thought of you carrying my baby. His voice broke. That terrifies me more than anything. Why? Victoria pulled back to look at his face. Because what if I'm like my parents? What if I'm so damaged that I can't be the father this child deserves. What if I fail them the way I've failed at every real relationship? His eyes were wet. What if I can't do this? Then we figure it out together. Victoria said firmly, "We're both scared, Lucas. We're both broken in different ways. But maybe that's okay. Maybe perfect parents don't exist. And the best we can do is love this child and try not to mess them up too badly." Lucas laughed wetly. "That's a low bar. It's an honest bar." Victoria cupped his face. "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be present, to trust me, to let me be your partner instead of your project. Can you do that?" "I want to," Lucas said. "I want to try. But Victoria, I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to try to fix things you don't want fixed, try to control things I should let go. It's who I am. Then I'll call you on it, and you'll apologize, and we'll figure it out." Victoria smiled despite her tears. "That's what partners do." "Partners," Lucas repeated, like he was tasting the word. Then he kissed her, tender and desperate, full of apology and promise and hope.